Welcome to the mop-up for April 28th, 2022. I'm David Feldman coming to you from an air shaft overlooking a parking garage somewhere in Manhattan where the temperature is 54 degrees and cloudy. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres met in Kiev today with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. A few days ago, the UN Secretary General met with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Today, standing in front of a pile of Ukrainian rubble where apartments once stood, United Nations Secretary General Guterres said, quote, "There is no way a war can be acceptable in the 21st century." He called the war an absurdity, a farce. He said, quote, "The sooner this war ends, the better for the sake of Ukraine, Russia, and the world." United Nations Secretary General Guterres said, quote, "I imagine my family in one of those houses that is now destroyed and black. I see my granddaughters running away in panic." Guterres said Putin was guilty of war crimes, but then added, quote, "When we talk about war crimes, we cannot forget that the worst of crimes is war itself." A month ago, when the UN condemned the Russian invasion, United Nations Secretary General Guterres said, "End hostilities in Ukraine now. Silence the guns now. Open the door to dialogue and diplomacy now." He called the war a ticking time bomb. He said the people of Ukraine desperately deserve peace. Any of those words come from the mouth of Joe Biden or anyone in his administration? When did war become America's first option? Even the Bush family went through the pretense of offering Saddam Hussein months to make a deal. Not Joe Biden, no diplomacy, none. 2 weeks before the invasion, Joe Biden spoke to Vladimir Putin for an hour. As Russian troops amassed along the Russian border, instead of dialing down the temperature, Joe Biden publicly warned Putin not to attack. On the phone, he told Putin an invasion of Ukraine would be met with swift and draconian punishment from the West. When he got off the phone, he told the world that Putin is going to attack. He didn't offer any peace deal, no olive branches. Joe Biden stayed hard and firm. Yeah. Vladimir Putin was very clear 2 weeks before the invasion. He said to Joe Biden what he said as far back as December 17th, 2021. Vladimir Putin made it very clear that America must deny NATO membership to Ukraine. Putin demanded that NATO stop courting former Soviet-era republics along the Russian border. Putin demanded that America and NATO reduce the number of troops amassing in Central and Eastern Europe. But America and NATO throughout last year consistently refused to consider those demands. Is the world safer if Ukraine joins NATO? No. Is the world safer if more Soviet-era republics join NATO? No. Is the world safer with more NATO and American troops stationed in Central and Eastern Europe? No. Why couldn't we at least meet some of those demands for the sake of peace? And so now there's a war. In the lead up to this war, the only talk coming from the Biden administration was how Russia would pay a price if it invaded. But Biden also said repeatedly that he wouldn't risk World War III by committing American troops to defend Ukraine. It was almost like an invitation to invade, the same way our ambassador to Iraq told Saddam Hussein that America would have no problem if he seized Kuwait. It's almost as though America wanted the invasion. Biden said to Putin in December, "We will not fight you militarily. We will arm Ukraine to the teeth, and then we will strangle you economically." Jake Sullivan, the national security advisor, warned Russia that if it attacks Ukraine, America will make sure Russia no longer supplies gas to Europe. And who would supply that gas? Well, you guessed it, America. This war in Ukraine benefits, obviously, our military and our oil companies. And because Ukraine is the third world's breadbasket, the war benefits America's big agra. Biden got what Teddy Roosevelt called a splendid little war. The Biden administration thinks America's food growers, gas suppliers, and weapons manufacturers will all make huge profits off war in Ukraine without a single American drop of blood having to be shed. I can assure you, when this war ends, if it ends, and anybody is left to negotiate a peace, Putin will get exactly what he wanted before this invasion. President Zelensky of Ukraine has already given up hope of joining NATO. America will save face while secretly agreeing never to expand NATO into former Soviet-era republics along the Russian border. And we will secretly withdraw troops from Eastern and Central Europe. We'll do it quietly. Why? Because Americans don't care. We couldn't care less about NATO or sending more troops into Eastern and Central Europe. For what? What are we doing there? So we will quietly save face and pull out. Russia will keep Crimea and parts of the Donbas region. And there will be a permanent state of war between Ukraine and Russia, like we have between North and South Korea. It'll be an armistice, no peace, and it will be a permanent flashpoint, never officially resolved, with both sides, Russia and America, getting to declare victory. Biden will get what he wants: profits for America's military, oil, and food interests. It will be a stalemate, a win-win. Both sides get exactly what they want, except the people of Ukraine. Their entire cities will be razed, tens of thousands dead, and of course, 5 million refugees so far. This, by the way, is my best case scenario. I'm being overly optimistic, conveniently forgetting that Joe Biden is a fool. I'm offering a best case scenario, assuming cooler heads, functioning heads, will prevail. There's also the chance of nuclear annihilation or the war spreading into Eastern Europe, and then America having to honor NATO's Article 5 and send in troops to protect NATO countries. This would also mean attacking Russia. More about attacking Russia in a few minutes. I don't mean to sound flippant, but I am dumbfounded by how flippant the American government and the American people are about war and its unimaginable consequences. I support the people of Ukraine. I am rooting for the people of Ukraine. I am rooting for America. I'm even rooting for Joe Biden. The world would be better off without Vladimir Putin. The invasion of Ukraine is a war crime. But like the UN Secretary General, I believe America and the world must use all its power to bring an end to this bloodshed immediately. There needs to be a ceasefire. And the best way to support the people of Ukraine is to get in a room with Putin and somehow get a ceasefire. The war is now in its third month. America and Europe are now secretly conceding this is far from over. Countries like Moldova, Hungary, and Poland fear fighting will spill into their nations. Vladimir Putin has nuclear weapons. Ukrainian cities right now are being razed. It is the responsibility of the American government, the American people, to use everything in our power to end the fighting and get people to the negotiating table. War is madness. This is a slow motion suicide. Nothing good comes from war. But Joe Biden does not speak of peace. Today, on Thursday, he told America he's asking Congress for $33 billion in military assistance for Ukraine. Biden said he will also take action to seize yachts, airplanes, and other assets belonging to Russian oligarchs with close ties to Vladimir Putin. Now, invading Russia. Earlier, I talked about invading Russia. You know, we've done it before. Wilson did it, sent an expeditionary force into Russia after World War I. The Ukrainian military has threatened to invade Russia. And Britain's defense secretary today said that he would be okay with that, even if Ukraine ends up using Western weapons for those attacks. The Ho Chi Minh Trail was a vast network of roads and paths between North Vietnam and South Vietnamese, the Viet Cong, who were fighting for the North Vietnamese. The trail went through Laos and Cambodia. Some of you might not remember the Vietnam War, or you're too young to know anything about it. North Vietnam, we were fighting North Vietnam. They were the communists, and they were using Laos and Cambodia to get their weapons into South Vietnam. So the Viet Cong, who were fighting on behalf of the communists, the North Vietnamese, they were using the Ho Chi Minh Trail to get weapons to the Viet Cong to kill American soldiers stationed in South Vietnam. That was the infamous Ho Chi Minh Trail, where weapons were funneled to the Viet Cong through Laos and Cambodia. So Nixon and Kissinger broke the Constitution and bombed Cambodia and continued the bombing of Laos that had been going on since the Eisenhower administration. This was all under the pretense of cutting off the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And those bombs that we dropped are still going off. There's still kids in Laos are playing soccer, and soon they discover no legs. Those bombs are still going off, and millions and millions and millions of Cambodians and Laotians died because of America's illegal bombing of the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Kent State was about that. And we're coming up on the anniversary of Kent State. So, the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Putin knows where the weapons are coming from. Ukraine has its own Ho Chi Minh Trail that flows from the west into Poland, Hungary, and Moldova, and then straight into Ukraine to kill Russian soldiers. Putin, like Nixon, might decide to bomb the Ho Chi Minh Trail, but this time it will be different. This time it won't be millions of Asians dying. This time it will be countless Europeans who look like us who are dying, the Poles, the Hungarians. How will you respond? With indifference? Or will you demand that we invoke Article 5 of NATO and send our troops to fight Putin? How will you respond, America? You do realize Article 5 gives America no choice but to send troops into Ukraine if Hungary, Moldova, and/or Poland is bombed by Putin. You do realize that Article 5 demands that we attack Russia if a NATO country is attacked by Putin. America's hands are tied. Article 5, NATO. Is that what you want, America? Or do you want a president who dials back the heat and tries to avoid war? What do you want? America's top diplomat, U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, said today it was up to Ukraine if it wanted to invade Russia. I think I'm dreaming when I read this stuff. Blinken, a former lobbyist for Boeing turned Secretary of State, said it was vital that Ukraine, quote, do whatever is necessary to defend against Russian aggression, and the tactics of this are their decisions. Really, it's Ukraine's decision, but it's your decision, Anthony Blinken, to provide them with the weapons to invade Russia. Do you want this, America? Do you want an escalation? Do you want things to get out of hand? Have you seen what Putin did to Syria, Chechnya? Do you see what he's doing to Ukraine? Do you really want to escalate until Putin attacks NATO, attacks a NATO country, and Article 5 gives America no choice but to go to war with Russia? Do you want this, America? Are you thinking about this? It was a year ago when Secretary of State Anthony Blinken announced he would recuse himself from all Boeing-related decisions made within his State Department. You see, Blinken used to be a lobbyist for Boeing. Well, I think Anthony Blinken saying his State Department would be okay with Ukraine invading Russia using American-made weapons, I think that is in fact a Boeing-related decision. Anthony Blinken, recuse yourself, resign. This is our top diplomat dialing up the heat, saying he'd support Ukraine if it invaded Russia. Anthony Blinken, recuse yourself, resign. Our top diplomat is saying he'd be okay if Ukraine used our weapons to invade Russia. If America doesn't have the money for universal preschool, if we don't have the money to fight the COVID pandemic, he needs $10 billion to fight COVID, Biden. May not get it. How is it possible, though, America has $33 billion in weapons for Ukraine? That's what Biden's asking for today, $33 billion in weapons for Ukraine. The Pentagon budget cannot be audited. We spend, we think, maybe $1 trillion a year on the Pentagon. They don't already have $33 billion worth of weapons gathering dust to give to Ukraine. We have to spend an additional $33 billion. Isn't the reason we already spend $1 trillion a year on defense is so we have some weapons to give to countries like Ukraine? Or maybe that $1 trillion we spend each year on defense isn't about keeping us safe. Maybe that $33 billion in arms that Joe Biden wants Congress to approve for Ukraine, maybe that isn't even about keeping Ukrainians safe. Maybe, just maybe, it's about something else. What could it be? Pretty much what you think it is, and Biden pretty much told us what it is. On the day he asked Congress for $33 billion in weapons, he said he's traveling to Alabama to visit a Lockheed Martin facility that manufactures the Javelin anti-tank missiles being sent to Ukraine. Biden, this is right after he asked Congress for an additional $33 billion for Ukraine. Biden said he is making the trip to the Lockheed Martin facility down in Alabama as a way of showing Americans that they, quote, have an economic stake in the war. He wants to show Americans that we have an economic stake in the war. Americans have an economic stake in this war. He said that out loud. You're not supposed to say that out loud, Joe. He said that war is a job creator and that we have an economic stake in providing weapons to Ukraine. And that's why he's going to the Lockheed Martin facility in Alabama, where 600 people work making Javelin missiles. Lockheed Martin makes those Javelin missiles, and its stock is up 25% for the year, while the overall market is down 11%. Joe Biden spent last Thanksgiving with his crack addict son and his family inside the home belonging to war profiteer David Rubenstein. He runs the Carlyle Group and the Kennedy Center. And the Council for Foreign Relations, David Rubenstein. Have I ever mentioned David Rubenstein from the Carlyle Group? Biden is shamelessly selling his new Ukrainian arms package to the American people as a job creator. He's messaging that the war in Ukraine is good for Alabama. You're not supposed to say that. I've never, ever in my life seen a president go to war by blatantly talking about how it's good for the economy, which may be entering a recession. That's a new report. That's for later. Look, you can't separate Hunter Biden's crack addiction from his father's complete and utter lack of a moral compass. To beat an addiction, you need to know right from wrong. You need to surrender to a higher power, and that higher power can't be war profiteer David Rubenstein from the Carlyle Group. If you are a crack addict and you're celebrating your Thanksgiving in the home of a war profiteer, you need to get the F out of that house and away from your father, or you will go back to that crack because you are surrounded by evil. I have never in my life witnessed such a blatant submission to the military industrial complex. No pretenses, pure, unabashed messaging out of the White House that war is good for the economy. Peace is better for the economy. Peace is better for the Ukrainian and the Russian people. Putin is a war criminal. He's got to go. Getting rid of Putin through war isn't going to work. It is not going to work. And if it somehow works, then at what price? We got rid of Saddam Hussein. Was that worth the price for Iraq and our soldiers? The answer is no. Maybe we can get rid of Vladimir Putin. Maybe we can get rid of Vladimir Putin. Maybe we can't. Do you really want to find out? There are, as the UN Secretary General pointed out, alternatives to war. Unfortunately for the Ukrainian people, those alternatives are not nearly as profitable as bombs are for David Rubenstein and his Thanksgiving guest, Joe Biden. Yes, we have much to be thankful for here at David Rubenstein's home this Thanksgiving. We have much to be thankful for because there'll always be war and profits. Biden wants to give Ukraine $33 billion in weapons, but he only wants to give them $3 billion in humanitarian food assistance. $33 billion for weapons, $3 billion in humanitarian and food assistance. So we know what his priorities are. They are to prolong the war. This is slow motion suicide. Poor Hunter Biden. He never stood a chance having Joe Biden as his father. His laptop is going to be a drip, drip, drip. The Democrats, they better win. They better win in November because once the GOP takes over, it's impeachment, nonstop Hunter Biden as America descends into a popular embrace of authoritarianism to calm the ensuing chaos from end-stage capitalism's final nail in our coffin, climate change. We are on the brink of authoritarianism. Joe Biden is the right man for the moment, only if you're praying for the end of America as we know it. Nobody in the Republican Party could damage my party. I'm a Democrat. Nobody in the Republican Party could damage my party worse than Joe Biden and the people he surrounds himself with. Hunter Biden isn't the only troubled son out there. And I wish Hunter Biden well, I do. But the only way you're going to get healthy, one addict to another, is get away from your Uncle Jimmy and your father Joe. You will never be cured until you get away from these people. Val Broeksmit, I think I'm pronouncing this properly. I'm now going to talk about the death of Val Broeksmit, and I'm murdering his last name. And we're going to talk about who murdered Val. He was a deeply troubled rock musician. He also directed Rob Schneider's 2005 comedy special, but we won't talk about that. I like Rob Schneider. Anyway, Val Broeksmit, deeply troubled rock musician. I want to talk about the mystery surrounding his death, which we found out about today. Like Hunter Biden, Val Broeksmit had a history of drug use and dodgy financial activity. Not a happy guy. But unlike Hunter, Val might be a hero. He grew up like Hunter Biden, surrounded by corruption. But unlike Hunter Biden, Val didn't try to dip his beak into that corruption. He tried to stop it, and now he's dead mysteriously. Val Broeksmit. I'm mispronouncing his name. I know I'm mispronouncing his name, and I apologize. He had a father named Bill who was also an unhappy guy. Val's dad, Bill, worked at Deutsche Bank as a senior executive, very senior. Bill, Val Broeksmit's dad, was considered one of the founders of Deutsche's investment bank. Deutsche, up until 2000, wasn't allowed to make investments, but around the time of the new century, banks suddenly were allowed to invest in, say, stocks and real estate, which they weren't allowed to do before about 1999. So Bill Broeksmit helped found Deutsche Bank's investment bank. Deutsche Bank is a German bank, dates back to the 19th century. And as it transitioned its business model towards riskier debt and investments, it became notorious for being the only institution willing to lend money to the perpetually bankrupt Donald Trump. You have to be out of your mind or in bed with Russian oligarchs to lend money to Donald Trump. Over a 20-year period, Deutsche Bank lent Donald Trump $2 billion that we know of. And as I've already told you, Deutsche Bank is one of the world's largest financial institutions and may be the number one money laundering shop in the world. Now, money laundering, as we all know, is hard to understand because it's supposed to be hard to understand. Nobody understands how it's done because it's theft wrapped in accounting tricks, right? You can't figure it out. You're not supposed to. Just know that it's theft. And it's not supposed to make sense. Like, what makes sense about Deutsche Bank lending $2 billion to a deadbeat, a chronic deadbeat like Donald Trump? I wouldn't lend Donald Trump $5, but somehow Donald Trump gets $2 billion, even though this con artist has a storied history of screwing every bank foolish enough to have ever lent him money. He never pays his bills, and that includes what he owes banks. The banks lent him money for his casinos, airlines, apartment buildings, and then he would declare bankruptcy. He'd screw the workers, the stockholders, and of course, the banks who lent him money. Because he declared bankruptcy, he only paid back his creditors, including the banks, if they were lucky, pennies on the dollar. If they were lucky, they got pennies on the dollar. By 2000, he screwed over Merrill Lynch, JP Morgan, Britain's Nat West. That's a bank, National West. Trump, by 2000, by 1990, was a joke. Everyone knew he had no money and that he owed more than he was worth. Everybody knew that. But he was groomed in the world of Manhattan real estate, where everything is smoke and mirrors, where you work hand in glove with the Gambino family and keep pouring the cement no matter what and threaten the lives and careers of any building inspector or tax assessor who gets in your way, because this is Manhattan real estate. You cannot build in Manhattan without a complete disregard for the law. The law is just a speed bump. It is why Trump was so impenetrable when he got to Washington, D.C. He knows who to call or pay or what dirty, filthy file to send to a prosecutor who then has to decide if they love their wife and daughter enough to drop the case against Trump. A file arrives at your desk. We all have secrets, and we don't want them ending up in the National Enquirer, which, besides being mobbed up, was notoriously protective of Donald Trump. We know that. So you cannot defeat the mafia. You can only limit your exposure to the mafia and, most importantly, walk away from it. Donald Trump knows that. He's old school mafia. He knows eventually Alvin Bragg, the DA here in Manhattan, I don't want to prosecute. Well, there's no need to make trouble with Donald Trump. I just got elected DA. My life is going so well. Donald Trump's lawyer used to be Roy Cohn, who was the Gambino family's lawyer. That's how Trump poured concrete in Manhattan. Roy Cohn fixed him up with the Gambino family. When Roy Cohn died of AIDS, Trump would bellow, "Where's my Roy Cohn?" And Rudy Giuliani answered the call. Rudy became mayor of New York City because as a federal prosecutor, he took credit for taking down the mafia. Right. Look it up. He took all the credit for taking down the mafia, which means nobody understands how the mob works better than Rudy Giuliani, especially since his very own dad was a low-level mafia flunky. Rudy Giuliani knows how the mafia works, and that's what the lead up to January 6th was. It was a mafia hit. January 6th was a mafia hit. It was mafia justice, where on one side you have the Constitution, and on the other you have money, you have powerful special interests, but most importantly, you have muscle. You have the Proud Boys, ex-cops, ex-cons, the 3%ers willing to hang Nancy Pelosi and Mike Pence. Of course, Giuliani and Trump knew they were going to storm the Capitol. That's how you do things in Manhattan. Building inspectors don't approve an extra 20 floors unless that building inspector's car explodes. You like the Manhattan skyline, you like the museums, the roads, the bridges, the beautiful Broadway theaters in Lincoln Center. You think this all gets built by people being nice to one another? The children of the 5 families all got educated at the finest schools, and now they're working for the finest banks. All the big banks are money laundering operations, and who better to bring in the dirty cash in truckloads to these venerable institutions? Who better to find that money and bring it to JP Morgan or Deutsche Bank than the children and the grandchildren of mobsters? Of course, it's not just Manhattan, it's the entire world of high finance and real estate. And that's why Deutsche Bank lent Trump money. Billions. $2 billion that we know of, with zero collateral. And Trump didn't always have to pay back the loans. For example, Trump borrowed $770 million to build the Trump International Hotel in Chicago. $400 million of that $770 million came from Deutsche Bank. And after the financial crisis of 2008, Deutsche Bank forgave the debt. They said, you don't have to pay it. It's not like it's a loan to go to college. We'll forgive the debt. As long as you didn't spend any of it sending your kids to college, we will forgive that. And by the way, debt forgiveness of that type is considered taxable income. But the IRS somehow magically forgave Trump for not declaring the debt forgiveness. They lent Trump money, more than $2 billion. Deutsche Bank lent Trump money based on, and I'm not making this up, Donald Trump's quote unquote goodwill. That's the term they used. Donald Trump's goodwill, because he was famous for things besides not paying back his loans. He was famous, right? So Deutsche decided his reputation could serve as Trump's collateral. Flat broke, Trump was able to borrow against his name. And it wasn't until Deutsche Bank was certain that Donald Trump lost the presidency late in December of 2020 that Deutsche Bank finally got around to, amid intense international scrutiny, they finally got around to firing Trump's banker over at Deutsche Bank, Rosemary Vrablic, who orchestrated hundreds of millions of dollars in loans to Donald Trump. 2 weeks before Trump left office, Deutsche Bank made a deal with Trump's Justice Department. See, they made a deal because a new Justice Department was coming in. They made a deal to pay more than $125 million to resolve criminal and civil investigations into charges that Deutsche bribed officials in Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Italy, and China. Well, we know that Trump didn't owe Russian oligarchs money. We know he owed Deutsche Bank money. And it doesn't take a degree in forensics accounting to understand that Deutsche Bank was lending the money to Trump because Russian oligarchs were putting up the collateral, because Russian oligarchs knew Trump was a useful idiot who would gladly take Russian money, dirty Russian money, and launder it through Manhattan real estate. But Trump needed upfront money to start building these money laundering operations, these, like Trump Tower. Trump needed about $2 billion in loans to start building, and that's what Deutsche Bank could provide. And they got it from the Russian oligarchs. And if he failed to pay back those loans, like with the Chicago hotel, the Russian oligarchs said, we got it, because the Russian oligarchs needed that hotel in Chicago to launder billions, not hundreds of millions that Trump owed on that loan. They needed to launder billions. Of course, it's complicated, but how could a bankrupt Donald Trump, notorious for not paying back his loans, get $2 billion from a notoriously corrupt Deutsche Bank? And then, surprisingly, here's the really interesting thing. Trump reportedly was able to pay back about $2 billion of those loans. He didn't pay it all back, but according to some reporting over at the New York Times, he was able to pay back $2 billion in loans. How's that possible? He's incapable of paying back all his loans. He never pays any of his bills, but somehow, magically, he paid about $2 billion back to Deutsche Bank. Where did that $2 billion come from? Deutsche Bank lent Trump $2 billion, and somewhere Trump found the money to pay back those loans. The perpetually bankrupt Donald Trump somehow found $2 billion. I think it's fair to say that we're talking about an elaborate multinational laundering scheme involving two of the single most corrupt entities in the Western world, Donald Trump and Deutsche Bank. Now, Deutsche has been caught countless times bribing foreign government officials, manipulating markets, not paying their taxes, violating international sanctions by doing business with rogue states, ripping off customers, and most importantly, laundering money for Russian billionaires. Which brings me back to our troubled rock musician, opiate addict, Val Broekschmidt, who we found out today is dead, and his dad, Bill Broekschmidt, Val's dad, Bill Broekschmidt, worked for Deutsche Bank until 2013. And then in 2014, Bill hanged himself in his Kensington, England home. An inquest was held by London's High Court, where it was discovered Bill left behind a series of suicide notes. He also left behind a series of documents, internal files, revealing the extent to which Deutsche Bank engaged in money laundering. A lot of money laundering. And Bill's son, who we have confirmed is now dead, Val, his son, this troubled rock musician with an addiction to opiates, he got his hands on the files and he cooperated with the authorities. He turned the files over to the FBI and he cooperated with the House Intelligence Committee. It was embarrassing, not just for Deutsche Bank. It was embarrassing for Donald Trump. It was embarrassing for the SEC, the FDIC. It was embarrassing to the entire banking world. Now, David Enrich, a former Wall Street Journal reporter and now with the New York Times, wrote in 2020 a book entitled Dark Towers, Deutsche Bank, Donald Trump, and an Epic Trail of Destruction. Enrich writes that Val, this is the young man who was confirmed dead today. Enrich confirms that Val's documents were the go-to source for accurate and reliable information regarding Deutsche Bank's tangled web of money laundering for Russian oligarchs. He writes that Val's information, that his documents were all accurate and proven to be authentic. By the way, one of the juicier tidbits in the book is that Jared Kushner in 2016 was making a fortune using Deutsche Bank to funnel money from Russian oligarchs into his own business ventures. So much of the reporting in the press and investigations conducted by the Senate and the FBI come from Val's trove of evidence. David Enrich wrote in a profile of Val in the New York Times, he wrote, quote, "We might wish our whistleblowers were stoic. Where am I? Sorry. Hang on. Sorry. David Enrich wrote in a profile of Val, quote, "We might wish our whistleblowers were stoic, unimpeachable do-gooders. But to let you in on a journalistic secret, they're often more like Val Broekschmidt. They're troubled. Whistleblowers are notoriously troubled. Val Broekschmidt went missing a year ago. On Monday, a body was discovered early Monday morning at Woodrow Wilson High School in El Sereno, California. Today, police announced it was Valentine Broekschmidt, Val Broekschmidt. So far, police say there's no evidence of foul play. The same way with Deutsche Bank. No evidence of foul play with Deutsche Bank. It died with Val Broekschmidt. No evidence of foul play with Donald Trump, Jared Kushner, Hunter Biden, Jimmy Biden, Nancy Pelosi's husband, Paul Pelosi. There's no evidence of foul play. And the wheels keep turning because there is no justice at that level. There is no justice in America. You know, Barack Obama promised that the arc of the universe points towards justice. He was quoting Martin Luther King, but unlike Martin Luther King, he said the arc of the universe points towards justice, but we just have to go slowly. Martin Luther King, no fan of incrementalism. Barack Obama, big fan of incrementalism. We need to go slowly. And the arc of justice, the arc of the universe will point towards justice. 80% of Americans in jail never had a trial. No money in this country for public defenders, but plenty of money for prisons. And yet we're told the arc of the universe bends towards justice. We are told by people like Barack Obama that the world isn't perfect, that life is about compromise. And so people like his friend, Obama's friend, Jon Stewart, counsel on his show, we should work with the oil companies. Kevin McCarthy, the next Speaker of the House, tells us to compromise with the drug companies. Pete Buttigieg tells us to compromise with our health insurance companies. And Nancy Pelosi, our Speaker, tells us America is a capitalist nation, so we owe a little more understanding to Wall Street and its animal spirits. We're told we're childish when we demand the richest 1% pay their taxes, because the richest 1%, they create jobs, even though those jobs pay slave wages and eventually end up overseas. The adults in the room, the Pelosis, the Obamas, the adults in the room accept the world as it is, so long as they do not have to sacrifice anything, especially their money and their power. The 99%, we are told, are impatient toddlers whose eyes are bigger than their stomachs. Yes, our eyes are bigger than our stomachs, partly because we can't afford medicine for our Hashimoto disease. But most importantly, we're just toddlers and we don't know what's good for us. So we need the adults, the ruling class, to tell us what exactly we need. And what we need more than anything else is civility. That's what we need. We need to be polite to one another. That's the problem in America. It's the division. It's this division. Bruce Springsteen does a commercial for some bullshit SUV to find the middle of America. Remember that Super Bowl commercial? You know, let's find the middle of America. And then they had to pull the commercial because he's, drunk driving. Bruce Springsteen, the boss, with his hundreds of millions of dollars, this past Sunday serenaded Jon Stewart, poster child for the neoliberal world order. He serenaded Jon Stewart at the Mark Twain Award ceremony Sunday. He serenaded him to the tune of Come Together. I'm not making this up. Come Together. That's what Bruce, Obama, Jon Stewart, and chairman of the Kennedy Center, David Rubenstein, who sponsored the Mark Twain Awards, that's what they all want. They want us to come together. The Mark Twain Prize was awarded to Jon Stewart on Sunday. And David Rubenstein from the Kennedy Center gives out the Mark Twain Award for humor, the war profiteer. And Bruce sang Come Together because that's what they want. These neoliberal charlatans, they wring their hands over all the division in this country. disingenuously failing to understand that when all the money flows into the hands of the richest 1%, when nothing is added to the 99%, all that's left for us is division. How can we not be divided when we have a government that allows all the money to be in the hands of a few billionaires and their poet laureates like Bruce Springsteen, Barack Obama, and Jon Stewart? When you have less money, when you have fewer options, you turn to division. You divide your time and your money into tinier and tinier and tinier increments. If I buy insulin for my son, then I have less money to spend on food for my son. But if I take another job, we can have food and insulin, but that will leave me less time with my son. And I'll have to pay for daycare. Division, division, division. You're dividing money and time over and over, division and division and division. If you're a member of the 99%, all you have is division. A little subtraction, no addition, mostly division. And that's why we're divided. But can't we all just get along? No. The shallower the pond, the meaner the fish. No, we can't all get along. 5 people, 1 loaf of bread, division. We can't get along. Bruce Springsteen singing Come Together at the Kennedy Center for the Mark Twain Awards in front of Nancy Pelosi, Biden's press spokesman, Jen Psaki, union buster Jon Stewart, and the guy who put it all together, war profiteer and chairman of the Kennedy Center, the Carlyle Group's very own David Rubenstein. Yeah, we need to come together, but not come together on providing universal preschool, free healthcare, free tuition at all public universities, affordable housing, and of course, getting off fossil fuels to save the planet. We can come together and spend billions and billions for weapons in Ukraine, though, right? The ruling elite, they want us to come together and dial back the hostility on Twitter. Where is all this anger coming from on Twitter? Where is all this hatred coming from? So much hatred directed at our celebrities and our politicians on Twitter. Twitter, we are told, is a cesspool of revulsion. Why? Well, because America is a cesspool of revulsion. America is a cesspool of revulsion. What do you think Mark Twain would say if he discovered that the prize in his name was given out by war profiteer David Rubenstein? He would say, now that's funny. They are clueless. Their money makes them dumber. They are dumber because of their money. Where does all this animosity on Twitter come from? Well, our government leaders are in a bubble. They want Twitter to be a branding machine. Our celebrities want Twitter so they can market to us. But Twitter has that darned reply button. It's one of the few, if not only, places in America where ordinary people can talk back to the ruling elite. So that's where all the hatred and animosity comes from. The reason celebrities and government officials detest Twitter so much isn't because of the death and rape threats directed towards women. They couldn't care less about women. Our government officials, our celebrities don't care that Twitter is a toxic source of misinformation about COVID or climate change. No, they hate and fear Twitter because it's one of the only places where we, the people, can tell government leaders and celebrities what we really think of them. Twitter is toxic because America is toxic. The 99% hate 99% of everything in America. We hate 99% of our celebrities. We hate 99% of our government leaders, 99% of the corporations out there and their leaders. We hate 99% of what's being jammed down our throats by politicians, leaders, celebrities, directors, musicians, corporations. The 99%, Bruce, the 99%, we've come together, whether Bruce realizes it or not. And we hate 99% of everything being sold at us and told to us. We hate our company, our cable companies. We hate our boss. We hate our president, our Supreme Court, our Congress. We hate our corporations, our celebrities, our movies. We hate Wall Street, the oil companies, the banks, our museums, our charitable foundations, and all the celebrities who are paid millions to endorse these corporations, like Bruce did for that, what was it, a Chevy van? And of course, we hate all the corporate celebrity shills for our political parties, especially the Democratic Party. So we have come together, Bruce. We have. You sold your song catalog for $500 million, Bruce Springsteen, but somehow you found the time to serenade a neoliberal hack like Jon Stewart at the Mark Twain Awards Sunday, but no time to serenade Christian Smalls that day at the big Amazon labor union rally on Staten Island. Come together, my ass, Bruce Springsteen. Write us another cryptic song about the ghost of Tom Joad for us, will you? Oh, but you have no idea what Bruce Springsteen does for the veterans and the homeless. I don't want Bruce Springsteen helping our veterans or the homeless. I want my government helping our veterans and the homeless. And we could help our veterans and the homeless if Bruce Springsteen paid his taxes. I don't want Bruce Springsteen donating to homeless shelters. I want him paying his taxes. And the government, I want the government running homeless shelters. Only the government has the economy of scale to take care of the homeless. I don't need Bruce Springsteen speaking up for the least among us. I need him paying more taxes and speaking up for a government that will speak for the least among us. Government is the solution, not Bruce Springsteen's charitable work or his songs. Government. There's something wrong, Bruce, with your lyrics if Ronald Reagan was able to campaign with Born in the USA. Something isn't clear when Ronald Reagan can use Born in the USA to campaign on. There's something seriously wrong with Bruce Springsteen's lyrics when Chris Christie, one of Donald Trump's most vocal supporters, has attended close to 100 Bruce Springsteen concerts. There's something wrong with your message, Bruce, when Chris Christie derives inspiration from it. Or maybe you like Chris Christie. Maybe you think we should come together with Chris Christie. You know, one of the memories etched into my soul forever will be watching Harvard's very own Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine serenading a group of hedge fund managers and their model wives, singing to them The Ghost of Tom Joad, Bruce Springsteen's song. He sang The Ghost of Tom Joad at a Christmas party thrown by some Wall Street hedge fund asshole for Christmas. He wanted to impress his friends, so he hired Tom Morello, Harvard's very own Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine, to serenade these hedge fund managers with The Ghost of Tom Joad. And they were jumping up and down, and they were raising their fist to Harvard's very own Tom Morello. I have it on videotape. I couldn't believe it. One day I'll play it. I could not believe. And I zoom in on Tom Morello, and he's strumming his guitar emblazoned with the words, "This machine kills fascists." Apparently, it also gets paid by them as well. This machine kills fascists. Go fuck yourself, Tom Morello. Take that Harvard degree and shove it up your ass. Come together. Tom Morello couldn't even endorse Bernie Sanders, Bruce Springsteen couldn't even endorse Bernie Sanders. And Mr. Wonderful, the chain-smoking John Mellencamp, in 2020 endorsed former New York mayor and media mogul Michael Bloomberg. Go fuck yourself, John Mellencamp. Yeah, you were born in a small town. Yeah. Such men of the people. But you know who sees through all this shit? Americans. It's why the working class votes for Republicans, because Mellencamp and Bruce Springsteen and Jon Stewart and even David Rubenstein, they're Democrats. And that's why the working class votes for Republicans. According to Jacobin, in 2020, Joe Biden beat Trump by putting together a coalition of highly educated, affluent people living in the suburbs. The working class hates the Democrats, the party of labor. The working class hates the Democrats. The GOP, the oppressor of the working class, has become the party of the working class. It's not Stockholm Syndrome. It's that the Democratic Party fucking sucks. According to Ronald Brownstein, I'm saying fuck like Jon Stewart, so maybe I can get a Mark Twain prize. According to Ronald Brownstein, writing for CNN, white voters without a college degree voted Republican in 2020 by a 26-point margin. And if their income was hovering near the poverty line, they voted for Republicans by a 31-point margin. Why does the white working class vote for Republicans? Why do they vote against their own interests? Sure, there's the ideological temptations of racism, but that is only part of a much larger suite of reasons that Democrats are unpopular with the working class. The Democrats have contempt for the working class. They have contempt for people who aren't educated. So the Democrats pay lip service. They take the working class for granted. Bruce Springsteen, he endorses Democrats because they share the same branding. Bruce sings about unions and the working man. He literally pays lip service to the least among us while taking money from the more affluent, $1,500 a ticket to see Bruce on Broadway. He takes money from the affluent who think hearing a song about the struggles of a migrant family is equal to actually doing something about it. The Clintons, the Obamas, the Pelosi's, the Bidens, they have convinced affluent, well-educated, white, suburban voters that caring about the struggles of the working class is synonymous to actually doing something about their struggles. Now, people say, why do you beat up on the Democratic Party? Well, let me explain. The Republicans, they are beyond redemption. I agree with Noam Chomsky when he said that the Republicans are more dangerous to the planet than the Nazis could have ever dreamed of. They are a shark. Let's just say they are sharks. They are killing machines. That's what Republicans are. They are killing machines. And the Democrats are the mayor on Memorial Day who warn us about the shark. But they keep the beaches open and they're refusing to spend any money on killing the shark. Instead, the mayor, he hires Bruce Springsteen to give a concert on the beach about how dangerous that shark is. And after the concert's over, Bruce and the mayor invite everyone to go into the ocean for a swim.